Hi, everyone. This is Reinette Senum with Reinette Senum's foghornexpress.substack.com. And today I have a dear friend, Joseph Arthur, joining me. He is a TNT radio show host. I've actually been interviewed on his show a couple times, and I've had the great privilege of meeting him in person at the Defeat the Mandate in Southern California quite a few months ago. And so I'm happy to have Joseph join us because not only is he a wonderful radio show host, but he's also an incredible musician. And now, an amazing activist. So, and we'll get into that here shortly. So, hey, Joseph, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Reinette, nice to see you again.
Yeah, I know. I sat with you on the sidelines and the sides off of the wing of Defeat the Mandates for a while, just kind of kicking back. It was so nice just to be, watching the show and talking and so on. And you felt like a brother from another mother, kind of. So it's it was good having.
Yeah, that's been one of the good things about our shifting world is a lot of the characters we've met in the freedom movement and the new friends we've made, because God knows we've lost some old friends. But there's been a slew of new people entering our realm and some pretty amazing characters, and you are definitely amongst those. So I'm grateful to meet you, and
you. So are
yeah, it
you.
was fun to commiserate at the Defeat the Mandate.
We do know how to do that. So just give us a little bit of a background. You're a musician and so on, and just talk like right now. I know you're currently in Arizona. Give us a little bit of your past and who you are, and also just at the top of the show, how people could find you.
Well, josepharthur.com is my website, and I release a song a week on Bandcamp, sort of relaunching my music career. And I have a TNT radio show, which is called Joseph Arthur's Technicolor Dreamcast. That's on Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Pacific. And I was in New York for 25 years and loved it. Artist, just making my living with music and painting. And then COVID hit, and I decided to speak out. So especially when they introduced the idea of giving the injections to children, that was a bridge too far for me. I knew that I would incur a lot of pushback if I spoke out, but I have heard other so-called truther, freedom-fighting people say that they felt they had no choice. I felt very much like that. It was a compulsion to speak out. Whereas before, the sort of chains of social shame and wokeism were revealing themselves a while before this, and so you sort of learned how to be sort of silent. I spoke out a little bit about the masks, but in a kind of weak way. But yeah, at that point, once they threatened children with it, I couldn't be silent anymore, and so I started speaking out in a pretty overt way, very strong. I would say when I went from 0 to 60, I kind of became very strong. And as I got huge waves of social shame and lots of people in my professional life imploring me to stop speaking, it emboldened me, to be honest. I have a punk rock, some kind of punk rock spirit, I think. And so that just emboldened me. Plus, I knew I felt like I was right, and as the time has bared out, that I think the people that have resisted this injection are obviously in the right at this point. I think that's more than blatantly obvious.
Yeah, whether people deny it or not, I do agree with you.
They still deny it some, but more and more. I mean, if you think about it, the social shame is almost reverse course completely. Now, I mean, a year ago, if somebody said something anti the injection, they would still get a barrage of social shame. Now, if somebody comes out in support of it, it's a barrage of social shame from people who succumb to it, and also, obviously, those of us who have been in the fight for a long time. Although now I never comment on people's things like that. I think thoughts and then just go, what's the point? They're either a bot or they're too far down the mass formation psychosis rabbit hole to be shifted by anything I'm going to say.
Yeah, I don't really comment on people. I just don't have time these days.
Yeah, I don't either.
But so I just do the occasional, see a good post, and then I kind of like do this to people's minds. I just do a hand grenade post it on my Facebook and leave.
Leave the room. So that's my technique too, is throw the hand grenade in the room and then walk away quietly
Yeah, that's
and
part of all.
get on with your day.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And deal with what's in front of you. I mean, it's a methodology that's, helping us, many of us survive, and we have no choice. So, and it's interesting because it's really interesting to hear people's stories. There's so many of us, right, who have had the exact same experience, just, and
Yeah.
then just the shedding of what we used to think were our friends and our inner circle. But again, who it's being replaced with is amazing. And I want to talk about the shaming, right? The defamation, of your character, calling you names, the harm it caused. So here you were, New York City, you're seeing what's going on, you're being outspoken, now you're being ostracized essentially and shamed. Then what ultimately caused you to go from New York to Arizona, which many people have done also, those type of moves?
Well, right before the pandemic, I had an art show in a museum called Fotografiska. I actually lived in the museum for a few weeks. They gave me a show, and I said to them, I was like, why don't I just live in the museum? You guys should buy me a bed, and it'll be like some kind of strange, like meta. People can visit. I'm living there and painting. I'll paint the whole show during the show. And I thought it was my first wacky idea, and I thought they would say no, of course, and they said yes, and then they bought me a bed, and I ended up living in this museum on Park Avenue, right? So, like this massive museum. So, and this just to illustrate kind of what my New York was like pre-pandemic. I had, permanent paintings hanging. I still do actually in City Winery, which is a major club. I could play there essentially anytime I wanted. I made a good living for a sort of cultish artist. And yeah, I just had lots of friends and lots of inroads to all kinds of establishments. I'm not saying this to brag, I'm just saying it to illustrate the story from like the sort of riches to rags thing that happened. And then, so yeah, when I started speaking out, all those contacts quickly went away. And I couldn't really play anywhere anymore. And the other thing was then New York implemented vaccine passports. And so I'm also an athlete. I go to the gym all the time, hot yoga. I was way into all those kind of activities, very health conscious. And I think a lot of people who resisted this were health conscious because we understood that our God-given innate immune system is amazing if well looked after. I fast regularly. I do a lot of things to make sure I stay healthy. And that's a message I wish would get out there more for people, that there's many things you can do to empower your own health and immunity outside of experiments from big pharma. Obviously. But that message needs to be promoted out there more. So anyway, all those things were then taken away. And then, so I went from the sort of situation where I'm living in a museum on Park Avenue and, can have the run of the place basically, to I can't even go into Starbucks. When I'm going into Starbucks, I'm hoping the barista lets me sit down in the winter to finish my morning cup of coffee. I mean, it got stark. And the funny thing about that is, because you especially somebody who's doesn't ever identify as a victim or anything like that, and pushes forward in life. I thought, oh, I can overcome anything. I'll exercise outside, whatever. But these things do wear on you. And people lean into these divisions in society. I think just it's human nature. It doesn't make people bad, but if people haven't lost any privileges, they sort of turn a blind eye to those that have. And so it just got so grueling. I have a child with my partner, and we wanted to raise her in a freer place, and New York just became untenable for us, really. We couldn't go anywhere. All we had was our apartment and walks outside and the bodega, and that was it for like 6 months. So it was like, let's move. Because also, it didn't seem like it was going to get any better. Of course, now we hear that it's gotten a lot better and a lot freer, and we miss New York a lot, but we're starting to love Arizona. So it is what it is. I don't regret the move, but I do miss New York. and I was surprised that places like New York and LA were the first to bend the knee to totalitarianism.
It was shocking, actually very shocking. I mean, I keep thinking of all the books and documentaries and films and Hollywood movies that are going to come out of this era. We're going to be unraveling this onion for a long, long time. It is so complicated,
Yeah.
when you see the layers of the psychological warfare and, just the undercurrents, right? The influence from around the world, foreign actors and the incredible level of collusion and payoff. I mean, it's just like it's like, wow, this could be some juicy stuff. So now
True.
you're
There's
in
going to
there.
be good art. Yeah.
It's gonna be some. I mean, we actually might get some phenomenal artists and writers out of this era, because if people have had the capacity to get off their screens long enough and just sit with themselves and pick up the guitar or pick up the pen and just really sit with what's going on and apply it, in some creative way, we might get some brilliant genius artists and musicians out of this.
Yeah.
Now, you're onto an interesting path right now. So tell me about the LA Times.
Well, the LA Times did a piece on me. I was losing all this kind of stuff, and the publicist I was working with, he said, "Oh, this is good. They're going to be fair," and it seemed like it could end up maybe helping save some stuff for me. So I acquiesced to the interview and did an involved interview with them, and it turned out to be, a 5-page or 4-page Sunday art section takedown, calling me an anti-vaxxer, calling me an extremist, interviewing all kinds of friends of mine, trying to, exact dirt and pain and all kinds of stuff, and just basically really just make an example out of somebody who is speaking out, really,
that's what I was
is
thinking.
essentially what it is. I mean, my whole idea of speaking out was, well, I know this is going to be difficult, but if I speak out, I was very idealistic and naive. I just was like, if I speak out, it'll encourage other people to speak out, and that's how
Yeah.
humanity works, and that whole chestnut. And I think the opposite of that basically happened, at least in the short term, because they certainly made an example out of me and wrote a piece designed to, do what it did, to draw the deep blood, basically, and that's what it did. And so, yeah, I never saw myself being involved in a defamation suit. I mean, I can take criticism. I'm not above it, but this was different. This was definitely, obviously, a piece designed to end me and end my career.
It's such a method. It's a real methodology. I mean, I've been involved in my local politics here for a long time. And I started noticing in 2010 or so, and I had like you in LA, you can get a lot done, and you, I'd say, even had like privileges because people knew you, they respected you, you had established a good relationship, and you can do a lot with that, right? That's a good, healthy thing, not a bad thing. And I started to notice that I could get a lot done because I was respected and well regarded, and I started to see like these moles and trolls kind of pop up in different places in my community, and just starting pissing and crapping all over the comments and this and that and next door neighbor, and you start, when it's like, wait a second, what's going on here? And then over and over, whenever I'd speak out against corruption, essentially, huge blow up in the newspaper, huge blow up on Facebook, and ultimately I had people say to me, yeah, Reinette, I'd really love to run for government, or I'd really love to get involved, but look what they've done to you. I mean, I just would never want that to happen. And I'm like, fascinating response. So not only were they attacking the one thing that I had, right? Like I live in a mansion, I have big money, and you can sue me. They can attack my reputation. That's what they can attack. So that's what they ended up doing, And so this is a tactic they've used all the time, and I saw it, and it was just fascinating because I see it over and over and over again around COVID and the vaccinations and the masks. They did the same thing with me with masks and the vaccination too, but and then what happens is it does cool people down to get involved.
Yeah, and you don't have to be a politician. I mean, if we look at like the arts community, they had a very disappointing showing in terms of pushing back. I mean, and I just saw Jan Wenner, a clip of him on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about he felt like the government should sort of control social media and stuff. And it's just very interesting. And he's the original editor of Rolling Stone magazine. This is a bastion of counterculture and rock and roll. And for him to be preaching that the government should be controlling what people can express on social media, it's just so counterintuitive to counterculture and rock and roll. I mean, and then obviously like Neil Young's a big example as well, who also went after Rogan. I mean, Jan isn't going after Rogan; he's on
Right.
Rogan, so at least he's got that right.
Right.
But like it's just it's so strange. Bruce Springsteen, one of the first artists to make sure his bass gets an experimental medical procedure to come see his Broadway plays. It's just, to me, that goes against everything his career stood for. And so, it's just hard to fathom. And I don't know. It's weird because also it's not like it's been a secret that Big Pharma is corrupt and responsible for untold amounts of deaths in terms of opiates and more. So it's like, and there was never a point before recently where a musician would incur any kind of trouble for speaking out against
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
giant corrupt institutions such as that. And so how they shifted that to their favor, it just, what we've learned is that humanity is incredibly susceptible to
Mhm.
propaganda more than we could have ever more than I could have ever assumed. I mean, obviously we're all sponges. We all want to be loved and accepted. There's, certain tenets of how our psychological makeups work that just is across the board, but I'd had no idea humanity was this susceptible to this level of manipulation and continues to be. Like, we're still dealing with like that bill that just passed in California. I can't remember the number of it off
1998.
the I think that's it, 2098, yeah. Where, doctors now in 2022, with what we know about COVID now, with all the sudden adult death syndrome deaths we've seen, with all the crazy, freaky deaths we've seen and injuries reported in people's real lived experiences, now doctors are gagged to say anything other than what big pharma's messaging is, and that's in law now in California. I mean, that got passed. It's like,
Well, I was there. I was actually at a protest the day that Newsom signed that baby into existence, let
it's
it go through.
unbelievable.
And we were there. Like Steve Kirsch was there and Lee Dennis. We were all speak. But but the only so let me tell you how much of a coward Newsom is. But most people don't realize is Newsom did sign the bill, but what Lee Dennis, attorney extraordinaire, said is that he signed the bill, but he really gutted the hell out of it before he signed it. So he
Okay.
wanted to appease both sides. So he wanted to not make us really pissed because he kind of
Right.
wanted it. But it's still precedent setting, right? People don't know it was gutted. They think it's full standing bill that they saw earlier. And it's
That's
going to be
good.
challenged in court.
Yeah.
They're going to win, but this is the problem
It still
is that
sucks.
it's now passed, and there's going to be other states going, "Oh my God, look at the bill they just passed!"
Right.
Hey guys, let's
Yeah.
do the same. So that's what's going to happen. He's actually just unleashed it, and we're going to win.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. They're going to
What do they
unleashed.
what do they call that? A bell tower?
Yeah,
California's a bell tower state.
I am, and I still apologize for that. So, yeah.
Well,
So,
you should. I accept your apology, but damn you, Reinette. It's your fault.
oh,
It's interesting the totalitarian tiptoe of all this, though, because you said, okay, they gutted it, but it's still a law and there's still some draconian
yeah,
aspects. And
yeah.
obviously, I'm not an expert at what's in that bill. I don't really know other than the sort of quick description of it. But the totalitarian tiptoe works really interestingly because if you can imagine going back 5 years ago and then all of a sudden the sort of new current rules of society were suddenly foisted upon us right now,
Right.
it would seem insane to
No way.
us. What it would be unbelievable, but because they like introduce these things step by step, piece by piece, then you just kind of grow into this sort of dull acceptance. I mean, it's the slow boiling toad
Yeah.
cliche.
Well, and it is happening, and again, it is so many generations in the making. We have been prepared for this time, right? We've been prepared to just accept our leaders, whatever dictates, edicts they make, and without question. And so, and this is the result of it. So, and because of it, it's going to get wild and woolly. I mean, I'm so happy to say, Joseph, that you and I and everyone else have made it into the history books. This has been the time you're going to be writing for a while.
I haven't spent much time considering that.
Well, I'm
I'm
like,
a day by day dude lately. Like I'm just like one day at a time, It's like, but you're right. I mean that is an interesting point, the old history book thing, because for people who haven't spoken out, I did that Megyn Kelly interview recently about this subject, and I had a couple musicians reach out to me and say, "Oh, I admire your courage. I've been wanting to say something. I'm still working on the courage." And I was just like, really? To me, like, I just feel like we're almost on the other side of this thing. And I think I'm naive, or I think that's somehow my post-traumatic stress disorder from the whole thing. It's how I deal with it. Like, it's almost over. We're almost there. So that I could be wrong. I'm sure I'm probably wrong about it, but these moments, these historical moments, these moments where you can display authentic courage against totalitarianism, they don't come around every day. And it's not like I would wish them upon my worst enemy. I finally understand that phrase of, may you be blessed to live in uninteresting times. That
wow.
always seemed counterintuitive. Like, really? Who would want to live in uninteresting times? Well, after the last few years, I would like to sign up next time to live in uninteresting times. Give me some uninteresting times, please.
Yeah.
Like, but as we're here in these interesting times, like, okay, for instance, I'm an artist. I'm working on all kinds of new songs, and I feel more creatively inspired than ever before. When I'm writing a song now, I can write the old love song, the old typical whatever song. I can also write about these times directly. My voice is unleashed. It has no shackles to it. So for artists out there who have, like, stood back and done the safe thing, now they're going to write, they only have love songs in the old timey rock and roll songs they can even really write about, or say, like, I love Joe Biden, or like, I support the current thing. But nobody wants to hear a song that's I support the current thing. People need songs about what's actually going on right now. And so you need to free your mind and speak your mind in order to allow your soul to evolve. And if you're an artist, that's your lifeblood of your art. That's what gives your art all of its vitality.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's been completely just stifled, for the last 2.5 years. I mean, again, all by design. And so I think we're seeing the outcome of that. And I am seeing, though, I have to say, Joseph, I am seeing an amazing pushback, right? We're seeing how, we're realizing that we've got the numbers and we're much more powerful than we realized. Not that we have an easy game ahead of us. I do not think we have an easy game ahead of us at all. I think it's going to get rough for a few years. And we have to be on our toes. But I just think that people such as yourself, a musician, right? So here you are just doing your own thing, and of course the newspaper, LA Times, tries to make an example of you, which they've done to me, by the way, as well. When I called out masks, they're saying that I'm saying masks don't work. It's like, no, I'm just calling it the fact that your governor, who does not have unilateral power to mandate medical devices on their face, right? That's what I'm talking about, is that overreach of power. And the LA Times is like maybe the anti-mask mayor of California.
Good for you. Masks are crap. They hurt your health. They fill your lungs with gnarliness. They're a visual representation of fear. That's, talk about psychological warfare. That's like and they're trying to bring those back. Some universities still, like Massachusetts, should be called Massachusetts.
When I wear a mask right now, and granted, we do have, like, we have the smoky days, or, if I'm, like, cleaning out some old barn and there's, like, rat droppings. I mean, there's, like,
get a mask on your face if you're cleaning out a barn, fine.
Yeah, right.
but if you're sitting in a classroom, geez, for kids.
I know. So let's talk about, so the LA Times does this lovely smear piece on you.
Lovely.
That example. And what was the process at that point in time? Like, what made you go, you know what, I'm going to fight this one? What was that process? Because there's a lot of us who should do that today. We should actually be doing this ourselves.
Well, because we have to fight back against people that are discouraging us to speak our mind. I mean, it is a war, and it's an information war. So when something like that happens to you, there's a blessing in it, in that you're being sort of called out to fight the system, so to speak. And you're supposed to fight you're supposed to fight totalitarianism. You're supposed to fight for you have to fight for your rights. So, there's that old redneck cliche, freedom isn't free, and it turns that way. It's like, it's interesting what they do with the language as well. A word like freedom sort of is like it's kind of soft racism now. Freedom, the very word. Tulsi Gabbard announcing today that she's leaving the Democratic Party. I wrote a piece about it for an editorial for tonight's TNT broadcast, about how the Democratic Party, I mean, I used to identify as a Democrat. I was an Obama guy. I thought when Trump was running, it was insane and all the rest of it. I was more recently red-pilled, so to speak. But the Democratic Party, the principles that I understood to be their principles, they don't have any of those principles now. I mean, I thought it was about freedom. I thought it was about self-expression. I thought it was about tolerance. I thought it was about, like, fighting the man. This is the kind of things that I thought the Democratic Party stood for the power to the people kind of situation. And it's obviously not that. So they have the word Democrat on their party, but all of their principles are basically fascist. I mean, and now they're starting to call, like, MAGA people fascist, and it sort of feels like projection. And not that I identify as a MAGA person. I don't like those political distinctions. And you yourself, I think, obviously feel that way. You ran as a third-party candidate, which I think is brilliant, and I think is a sign of the way things are going. I think you're a little ahead of your time, but and so those of us that are ahead of our time, we get punished for it. We get punished for being ahead of our time, but oh well, the history books hopefully will be kind. But so yeah, I don't like those distinctions because they're there to divide us further. So it's not like I'm Mr. MAGA guy or anything like that. But at the same time, the Democratic Party has completely jumped ship into something that doesn't resemble sanity whatsoever.
And there are just shades of gray between the two parties, but
right.
There's no doubt the Democrats are just like Newsom. The Michigan governor. I mean, there's all these, they're CCP foot soldiers. I mean, they're doing the bidding for the Chinese, and they're giving them entree, just like Trudeau is in Canada. And, and so just, and Biden, I mean, my God, can you be more of a...
He's in their back pocket. I mean, that Bobolinsky story, how that keeps just being submerged is beyond me. Well, it's not beyond me. I can see how these things happen, but the Hunter Biden laptop and his sort of bombshell analysis of it and his involvement of it. I mean, this was in the election. He was telling a compelling story on Tucker, and he just came back on Tucker recently and said it again. And it's just like, people just have deaf ears to it. It's like, this means that Joe Biden is corrupt. So this means he's not going to be working in our best interest.
He's a national security risk. Like the biggest ever.
100%. Yeah, and America is undergoing a controlled demolition right now. That's clear.
Yeah, it is a controlled demolition from the inside out. And again, I've been going on generations, and the infiltration, right, is just so deep. It's like, I don't even know how we extricate ourselves from it. I've been saying for some time, we're just going to have to kind of bear witness. The carnage is not over from the vaccinations. The economically speaking, all the things that we assume to just be commonplace and expect every day will be getting interrupted. And, I just try to tell people, let's just get emotionally, mentally, and physically ready as much as you can for this, because those individuals who continue to ignore the obvious, when things begin to really fall apart, they're going to go into shock. They're going to be in the fetal position. They're not going to know what hits them. And that's kind of...
Hopefully I'll be out of the fetal position by then.
Some will, for sure. But there's just a lot who are just going to be recalcitrant, and it's whoever devised this pandemic was brilliant. I mean, just
work of evil genius. It
evil
really
genius.
is.
Like, wow, this is a good one. And
Yeah,
so,
I admire the devil's handiwork in this one.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
got it wired. He's
Wow.
got it wired. I mean, it's like, wow, bro.
Good
Hats
job.
off. Stunning. You've clearly done
Yeah.
your homework
You
on
won.
human nature.
You get the blue
Like,
ribbon.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you're after LA Times, and you have a defamation lawsuit. Where is that right now? Currently, where does that stand?
Um, it's just we're just finding, I think, a court in Phoenix to go before a judge, basically, and
Okay.
determine whether or not we have the case or not. I think that's
Okay,
where it
good.
is. We've filed, and then the next step is going in front of the judge. So I'm waiting word on that, basically, patiently waiting.
Right.
And that's it. It's just I'm living my life. I'm building my life, and you know, I really do believe God doesn't give you anything you can't handle, and everything happens for a reason. This has been enormously good for me on a personal level. I've become a broadcaster in this. It humbled me a great deal. That's always good as a human being, to be humbled. It's not fun. It's it's there's been I would say, actually, no, I was going to say there's been more fun periods of my life, but not really, because I have a 1 and a few month-year-old daughter, and it's incredible. I mean, so I'm deeply blessed in this time, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
It's a fun period to be there with them and watching them grow. And
oh yeah.
you're fighting so hard. You're fighting for a future, big time.
Yeah, she always wants to come in the studio and make music with me, and then, like, even when I did this interview, I had to close the door on her, and she
Oh.
gets mad and bangs on the door, and I have to ignore it and just be just like
What month? What's her birthday?
August the 2nd.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So she's just over 1 years old, but
Well, I wanted you to come on, Joseph, because your story is, we've all experienced similar stories, and it's important that people hear this and know that they're not alone, and that amazingly we are finding each other, and also we're learning, where our backbone is, and stepping up and getting uncomfortable and pushing ourselves and expanding ourselves, and then making a stand. Like you going after LA Times. I mean, think about every single day the LA Times is defaming somebody, right?
yeah.
So, and it's great that you're like, nah, you're not going to do that to me. So this is good. I want people to hear this story because we need more of it. It's a numbers game. The more of us who push back, right, the more successful we're going to be.
That's it. We have to push back. We have to keep fighting. And I mean, more and more people are waking up all the time. Like Bill Maher, somebody who I watch his podcast, and he's like coming out pretty staunch against the sort of medical response to COVID. But what's interesting about him is then he'll turn around and talk about the environmental crisis, like that's completely legitimate as well, when it's brought to you by the same people that brought to you the COVID crisis. It's like if you caught a friend in a lie, and it was a doozy of a lie, and then said, but this other thing you said to me, that's totally true, right? That's still true. It's like, dude, at least question now everything they've said. So my point is once one of these narratives fall apart, notice who delivered the narrative and notice their other narratives, and then maybe at least question the legitimacy of their other narratives, because you would do that with a friend. If your good friend really, really lied to you hardcore about something really, really important, you might then consider the other things they said to you as at least suspect. At least,
there's a rule of thumb. It's not 100%. It's just a rule of thumb. But how you
no,
do.
it's not 100%, and
No,
but
there's a quote. There's a quote of how you do one thing is generally how you do everything.
Exactly.
So it's just kind of like, it's so just, if you start seeing, because I've seen some cracks in people's stories or what they say, and you're like, wait a second. And then you just see it just kind of fall apart even more. So I think
well, look at the motives and look at the motives. Is there a motive to subjugate and control people? Is there a motive to relieve humanity of its own sovereignty? Is there a motive to gut the middle class? Is there a motive to make it hard for people to empower themselves? And so you can just see a pattern. I mean, even like promoting ideas like traditional family values, that doesn't make you intolerant to people with other lifestyles. You know, as you know, consenting adults, you know, everybody just do you, and God bless you, and I love you, and but to like, but the idea that a traditional family structure can empower you in ways that should also be celebrated. That should also be able to be talked about and encouraged as a good thing, as and not as like this weapon against people with alternative lifestyles that are also great if that's working for them and everything. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, as a gay woman, I've always been baffled by that. I'm like, you guys,
right.
I was raised from a heterosexual couple, you know, I mean,
right.
typical family structure, but I'm a gay woman, you know,
Right.
and we still support that family unit, right? It's important. We got to continue as a humanity. And in fact, infertility is skyrocketing. So now would be a great time to do it, you know, but I still support, you know, if you are an adult, you want to do your transgender, you know,
Exactly.
more power to you.
I have no issue with that. I don't have any issue calling anybody by their preferred pronoun. I'm not like somebody that goes hard to the paint against trans issues. But when you talk about kids, that's different. Kids are going through identity issues. I mean, adults are going through identity issues, but kids famously so. And the propaganda, we've seen how good that works on adults. Imagine being, you know, a teenager in front of TikTok 45 hours a day with messaging getting embedded in you that you can get love and acceptance this way. That's powerful.
TikTok is from CCP.
I know, I know.
I mean, and their TikTok over in China doesn't look like that, right? They're you know, and algorithms are very different, and they actually support and showcase engineering and science feats, and you know, not who can do the best booty call kind of twerking dance.
Right. I know. We're launching a clothing line, actually, shopjosepharthur.com, little plug there. We have these t-shirts and clothing items that have the message "Speak Your Mind," so it's a Speak Your Mind line. So me and my lady, we're figuring out, okay, we got to get on this TikTok thing, and I know all the CCP thing, and they're going to know all my information. I'm not really that paranoid about it. Probably should be. But so we're like cracking the TikTok code. She's like, here's how we do it. And she's watching videos. And I'm looking at TikTok and going, and I was like, look, this is basically soft porn. And she goes, I think it's because you're a dude and they're like feeding you that stuff. And I'm like, I guess. It's just like, it's crazy though.
But it's like soft porn.
Yeah. It is.
Oh man. Well, I'm so grateful for you, Joseph, and I'm going to keep my eyes on your court case. And
thank you. Wish me luck.
I will. Oh, I am. And our paths keep crossing. I'll see you and I hear you online or in the real flesh. But you're just one of the good parts of COVID, actually. So
well, you too, Reinette. So thank you for having me on your show. So is this a new podcast you're lifting off right now?
I'm on Substack now. This is Reinette Senum's Foghorn Express .substack.
Okay. And you just recently started Substack?
I started again in July, I think it was, because I used to be, when I jumped off the city council in 2020, that fall I started my YouTube channel. And when I interviewed Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, it was the first time anyone ever mentioned the mechanisms of injury around the shots. That went viral, got millions of views, and YouTube took my channel down, no warning.
Wow.
So shoot. Try to save some of the interview, because I had a lot of interviews, and because interviews weren't really happening. I mean, just people were so quiet. And then when I ran for governor, I stopped because I did not have the capacity to do both. And now I started up again because, I just, trying to give a different information, connect the dots for people, lots of solutions, and just give people information, really lay of the land, right? It's like, it's really hard to make decisions if you don't have enough information. And so what I do is just say, hey guys, these are the pieces coming in. This happened here. Here's some context. This is what's happened in the past. You may not have read this. You probably don't have time to research this. So let me lay it out for you. And then you can kind of like, oh, okay, that's good to know. So it's called the Foghorn Express. The objective is to get through the bank of fog, get into some clarity.
I like the name.
It was actually I had a great uncle. He was great great grandfather. His name was Edward Funston from Kansas. And he was two-time two-term congressman, and his slogan was "Foghorn Funston, farmer's friend."
Your story about your grandfather,
My great-grandfather. That was my
great-grandfather,
great-grandfather. Yeah.
but your story, your family story, and the sort of synchronicity involving you guys is profound.
Yeah, that book I'm actually trying to get done this winter. I'm trying to get that book done.
Yeah, we got to press on. Massive action, and massive outpouring. I need to start my Substack as well. It's got to happen. I'm going to do that this week.
Yeah,
you're inspiring me. There's all these things you have to go. Which one should we do? We should do
I
TikTok.
know.
We got to do this. It's kind of overwhelming, but you got to get on it.
Yeah, it's true. Well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time. And tell your little daughter, we haven't met yet, but I look forward to seeing her someday and giving her a big old hug.
I appreciate it. I will definitely give her a hug for you.
All right. Well, thank you.
Reinette. God bless you.
God bless you, honey. And thank you everyone for just chiming in and watching. And until next time, thank you, Joseph Arthur. Check him out on TNT Radio. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.